Okay, I'll continue with this thing. I think I'll read back a little bit. Yeah. Let's see here. Hmm. Okay. Abdullah went on with, ants communicate acoustically as well as through odor. Odor. That absolutely ends the argument right there. Think again, said Driver, angrily thinking he wasted all his life pulling out prayer rugs and sticking his patootie in the air. Abdullah read on with, but to take it even a step further, scholars of hermeneutics. Ooh, hermeneutics. Big word. So it has to be true, said the driver in a whisper. Of hermeneutics have stated that due to the verses preceding Quran 18 through 19, it can be strongly adduced that these are winged ants or possible winged termites. Oh, so termites can understand human speech and vice versa as well, asked the driver, sarcastically to himself. Ahmed heard him say that and looked at the driver as if the driver, uh, was eating his snot. The driver turned to Ahmed in the seat across from him and said, "I heard the words like hermeneutics and adduced, so it just has to be true." Ahmed looked shifty-eyed and scared while Abdullah read on. While Abdullah read on with, in verse 27:16, which is two verses before the topic of this discussion, Solomon states words in Arabic saying, quote, "We have been taught the mode of communication for those things which fly, birds, etc." The word tar in Arabic literally means to fly, as the words for bird and airplane also derive from the same root of tar, in the Arabic language. Ahmed looked down, feeling depressed even more, and said, "Brother, this sounds like the scholar." Brother, this sounds like the scholar is using a snow of words to hide the fact that Solomon was able to hear and understand ants, and ants knowing that he was a human named Solomon. It's not working. Can't you find a better scholar to discuss this passage in Quran, please? I haven't finished, said Abdullah with some. I haven't finished, said Abdullah with some anger in his voice. He then said, "This is the opinion of Ash Shaub." Shub. Who? Asked the driver. Who is he? Who who is he to know anything? Remember, brother, said Ahmed on the verge of being sarcastic himself, if you need to know anything dealing with Islam, you ask scholars, or you ask those who have read the before scriptures. As Abdullah read how ants had sometimes two wings, and then started reading on and on of how ants in swarms with their mating habits somehow meant they communicated acoustically, and thus the Quran was true with Solomon able to communicate with talking ants in an acoustic auditory manner, the wounded Muslim on the lower bunk was now moaning more from mental anguish rather than from the bullet wound. The driver then whispered with a serious look in his eyes at Ahmed, "This is sad, brother. Really sad." A few minutes later, Abdullah read off the computer screen, quote, "Now, do critics of Judeo-Christian background have anything to stand upon when they take when they make this criticism about talking ants in the Quran? No. The word used in verse 18 and 19 of Quran 27 for our communications are inflections. This word does not only mean to speak, but also to convey something, to make sound. In other words, said Ahmed, in a near fit of rage and depression, it is saying that ants were able to talk and be heard acoustically with Solomon and vice versa. Hey, makes perfect scientific sense. A feeling of being stabbed in the stomach struck Abdullah when it finally dawned on him that Ahmed was being sarcastic. Abdullah couldn't believe that he Abdullah couldn't believe that he was the only one who felt the article explaining the scientific reasons for Solomon being able to talk with ants and vice versa made perfect sense to him, but not to the others. The Muslim writhing in pain on the bottom bunk burst out laughing. "What are you laughing at?" shouted Abdullah with growing fury. The Muslim who Daniel shot gasped out with anger. "You believe this crap about talking ants and Solomon believing them? Don't you? That article you read was the stupidest of articles I've ever heard trying to defend that ant passage." "I'll see if I can find one more that is better for you then," shouted Abdullah. "There is more of them written by brothers who aren't going to hellfire." "Don't bother," said Ahmed. The driver then said, "Really, brother, don't bother. It can't be defended. It can't be defended." "Don't bother. It can't be defended." "Well, there is more. Maybe it gets better," said Abdullah. He read, quote, in the book of Daniel, it says, quote, "I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake." That is Daniel 7, verse 11. Ha! In their Even in their Bible, it says that. So, if the Quran is wrong, so is the Christian Bible. Ha! Laughed Abdullah. Abdullah read on. A talking horn, quote, "a talking horn, the notion of an inanimate horn talking is even more absurd than a talking ant." Ahmed then said, "Not when that could be metaphoric. Unlike the article you read, did you see anything about it being a metaphor, brother? Was the Quran speaking of talking ants, of understanding, who knew who Solomon was, just a metaphor and dream, like a talking horn in Daniel could have been? Did it sound like a dream or metaphor to you? Did it?" Abdullah ignored the question and read on with, quote, "The fact is that these are miracles and you aren't supposed to try and scientifically explain them anyways." The driver then shouted angrily, "If not, then what was all this scientific jargon you just wasted our time with in talking about mating swarms, hermeneutics, and bug communication? Why didn't you say it was a miracle from the very beginning? Why not claim it a miracle like you did with the running rock Allah used to prove modest Moses was well formed in the genitals?" Ahmed then shouted, "Right! Right! As it proving to people. Their leader has nice..." Ahmed then shouted, "Right! As it proving to people their leader has nice-looking, disease-free balls. It's all damn important also. And yet Allah thought that important? Allah thought so? Wow! And you believe this? Man!" The driver then shouted, "Again, so it sounds like it is backed up with science and not a miracle? Or is it the opposite? Which are we to believe? Can the guy who wrote that stupid article make up his mind with the supposed evidence?" Abdullah, looking terrified, as he was no longer traveling in a truck filled with fellow jihadis, but was possibly surrounded by hell-bent apostates. Yeah, Abdullah looked terrified as he was no longer traveling in a truck filled with fellow jihadis, but was possibly surrounded by hell-bent apostates. "You guys are out of Islam, aren't you?" he asked with a shaky voice. There was silence. Ahmed said, looking down at the bottom of the gear shift, "If you really want to know the truth, uh, I never believed in Islam. I just went through the motions, so idiots like you, oh Abdullah, wouldn't force me to pay the jizya or saw my head off after Ramadan." The driver of the rig saw the gun in the hand of Ahmed, felt it would be used on Abdullah if he spoke the truth, and said, "Honestly, I never believed in Islam either. Oh, I tried to. I really tried to being that I was bound to be wasting so much of my life with it, but truly, it all seemed like a stupid game to me, where the rule was not to let you know, where the rule was not to let how you felt about it, or risk having idiots like that up in the bunk, sawing my head off." Abdullah made a whimper of terror. The driver went on with, I'd act all angry and shit whenever I heard someone draw a picture of the pedophile we do have to worship. But I only acted angry and called for the death of non-Muslims because I never knew when idiots like him up there would try to kill me if I didn't." Abdullah's eyes were bulging with terror. Ahmed then said, "I never knew who was like me, or who was like Abdullah either, brother. I never could let anyone know how I felt also. You wouldn't believe how much I hate pulling out the prayer rug now. I hate it. With my ass in the air like I want to get mounted, it's humiliating. Oh, how I hate that. Do you know how old that has become for me? But I do it. Because I know that if I don't, crazy idiots like you up there will probably firebomb my house and kill my family in trying to get to me. You'd probably do it even before sacred months are over, like Quran 9:5 tells you to do with infidels. You would, wouldn't you?" Abdullah looked as if he was about to pass out from the terror he was experiencing. From his study of the Quran, he got the feeling that apostates were the worst of all creation. Suddenly, Abdullah quickly called up the Muslim in the SUV that was following and said, "Hussein, we have a problem." Hussein, we have a problem. As he talked on the phone, the driver turned to Abdullah and said, "There's nothing wrong with this guy ahead of us. I never thought I'd say this, but hey, you want to join him?" "How?" asked Ahmed, feeling hopeless. "He'd never trust us because of Quran 3:28. He'd think it was a trap." The driver then said, "When he gets Hussein to try to help him kill us, we shoot the both of them. We tell those back at the mosque that Daniel is some kind of supernatural gunslinger type." Suddenly, terror gripped all in the Kenworth when Abdullah angrily shouted down from the bunk as he picked something up. "Hey, remember these in case we get questioned by the DOT?" It was a bomb, and it was out of its box. Ahmed felt his heart sink. Without even thinking of shooting him with the gun, he found himself uncontrollably leap at Abdullah in the top bunk to try to wrestle the bomb away from him. Right when he was about to grab it, Abdullah kicked Ahmed in the face, knocking him into the control panel. "Allahu Akbar!" shouted Abdullah.